In this video, I'll do a demo of my version of the week 11 assignment. And I'm starting here in Illustrator, back in my assignment for week 7, where we illustrated poems. Now, you're not required to loop back to one of your old assignments for this week's version, but I already have a nice composition here, and I can use this not only to give some demonstration of the process, but also as sort of a composition that we could move through and see different parts at different times. I'm imagining how does my eye sort of travel through this composition? Those are the areas I'd like to sort of split up and show to people sequentially. And of course, you could make your own new composition. You could also use one of your digital collage assignments. Really, anything's fair game. We're focusing more on the coding and the structure of showing sequences and different states of compositions. So try not to put too much work into actually making the visuals and focus more on the coding and the structure in P5. So to get this ready, I want to go to File, Export, and select Export As. And here we'll get options for pixel-based images. So one way or the other, whether we're coming out of Photoshop or coming out of Illustrator, we want a pixel-based image. And I'll go ahead and make this into a PSD Photoshop document, and I'm saving out into the demo files for this week. When we're exporting a Photoshop document, we'll get some export options. That includes the color model. I want to stick to RGB since we're just doing this all on screen. That color model makes the most sense. My resolution, I'd like to set probably at least to 300. I'm actually going to go higher, so I'll click on Other, and let's make this 600, and that way I'll have lots of flexibility in case I wanted to focus in on just one small part of my overall composition. This will allow me to do that without seeing pixelation in the cropped out version. So I want to keep the layers, and I don't want to select flatten image. And I don't think I need maximum editability. I'd just like to toggle on or off some of the layers. And for the anti-aliasing, I'm going to go to Art Optimized. That's going to look the best because I don't have any text here. And I'll embed the color profile, which should be sRGB. Go ahead and click OK. Now I can see I've got a PSD file here in my demo file folder. So I'm done with Illustrator for now. Let's go ahead and quit out of Illustrator. Now let's open up this PSD file. So I can see here I've exported every single part of my Illustrator file, even the shapes that extended off the artboard. That's okay, because I'm going to take this complete composition and save out several crops that are basically sub-compositions, so smaller areas of my overall composition, and I can use those to make a sequence or a group of images that can work together in P5. So let's go ahead and use the crop tool, and I'd like to make some settings here to crop a specific width and height and resolution. So this will make sure that I can get the exact right size to take into P5. So I'll click on width, height, resolution. And so here we need to make some decisions about what the visual size of our P5 canvas will be. And I'm thinking I'd like something that's actually a similar sort of landscape format, so wider than it is tall. And I think something around 800 pixels by 400 pixels will be a good dimension. And then since I'm making this for screen, I want to set my resolution to probably 72 ppi. I also want to make sure that I uncheck this delete cropped pixels box, because my plan here is to make a crop, save it out, undo the crop out a different part of the image. And what I'd like to start out first is just the sort of seagulls and the beach with none of these foreground figures there. So let's bring up the layers panel, and I'll just tweak some of those. There we go. And now I can just click and drag. And I want to get rid of my smart guides too. I don't think those are helping me here. And I'd like to also turn off snapping. And this lets me set exactly the crop that I'd like. So I'm playing with this. I think I'd actually like something even longer than it is tall. And I could do that either by increasing the width or decreasing the height. In this case, 800 is probably about the max I want to go to. So let's shrink down the height, and I'll make that 300 pixels. And keep the resolution the same. Okay, so I've got this where I want it, and I'll hit return on the keyboard to commit the crop. I can see this is shrunk down. That's good. That's actually what I want, because I am going from my very high resolution export that I got from Illustrator, and I'm shrinking that down to the exact size that I'd like to bring into P5.js. So from here, I'll save this out just by clicking File, Save As. And probably for this type of an image, a JPEG makes the most sense. And I'll call this something like crop 1. And the default JPEG options should be just fine. So there I can see in my folder, I've got one view that I can bring into P5. So back to Photoshop. Let's bring up my history panel. So I'll backtrack before I did the crop and just zoom out. Now we can focus on some of these other parts of the composition. I'd also like a version where I'm focusing on this figure that's running, leaving the other stuff that was in the foreground still turned off. So I think that's looking pretty good. Same process I'm repeating here, hitting return to finalize the crop, then I'll export, and I'll do this several times so that I have some images to bring into P5. Okay, so I've gotten all my crops exported from my main composition, and I'll go ahead and just put those all in a folder. That will make it really easy to bring into my P5 composition later.